with Node.js. I hope everyone's having a great day. Let's jump into the agenda for today's discussion. So what we'll do is briefly talk about what it means. What does an API really mean? Okay, there's so many words thrown around out there. People use the word API differently. So let's first have clarity about what that word means, and then we move on to an example of an API-based application. So an API isn't really a code or an application, but that meaning will be more clear shortly. But we'll look at an example of an API-based application. And once we understand what an API is, and we look at an example of that, I will take you through the technology that you need to be aware of to build, let's say, your own API-based application. So I'll show you a small script. Then I'll tell you how it's used, why it's used, and how you can get started. Okay? And then towards the end, we will, I'll also talk about how you can integrate other API-based applications into your own project, and how you can make other applications, other developers to talk to your own API-based applications. So you learn what an API is, you look at an example of an API, you learn how to build your API, or at least you will have a guideline for how to get started with that, how you can work with other APIs, and how you can get others to work with your own API. Okay? Now let me take you to this slide because we have a lot of people who ask us about the coding bootcamp we have here at AstroLabs. I'm sure you've heard of this before. It is the largest coding bootcamp in the region. We have now over, I think, 150 participants who've joined our coding bootcamp. Now, the things that we will cover in that bootcamp, some of that stuff we will look in today's session. So a lot of the topics that we talk about in the coding bootcamp, we are going to talk about also here. So you'll know why those topics are particularly important, and perhaps it will help you consider whether this coding bootcamp is right for you. Now, it is a 2-month coding bootcamp where we have over 100 hours of teaching. All of our mentors are experts in their field. We will make sure in the coding bootcamp that you learn all of the tools that you need to know about should you choose to become a professional developer. And if you're someone who has been learning coding on your own and you get stuck, or you have not been able to figure it out, or let's say you've reached a plateau, then this is the kind of program where we make sure we get you to the next level. Okay, now more on that towards the end of the bootcamp. But let's quickly jump into, like I said, perhaps the most important item in today's workshop, and that is the definition of the API. Okay, now I want to ask everyone to type in there in the chat. I want you to type in what you think the word API means. In one word, describe the word API. Okay, and at the end, maybe we'll look at that. I want to see what everyone thinks the word API means. And while you type that in, I will give you my definition of the word API. The acronym API stands for Application Programming Interface. Application Programming Interface. Now that really doesn't make it clear. Application Programming Interface to what? Okay, so if you were to Google the word API right now, you would get many different definitions. Okay, but here's how to think about it. Let's say you and I want to work with each other. Let's say I am a client and you are a company. How do I work with you? What is the protocol? What is the way in which I can communicate my request to you? I want, let's say, a product from you. and I want to know when that product will be delivered. How do I communicate this to you? Do I visit you at the office? Do I send a representative? Do I send you an email? Do I text you on WhatsApp? How do I communicate to you? Okay. The word I'm trying to capture here is protocol. What is the rule for corresponding with you? How do we go back and forth with our communication? This idea of business correspondence is analogous to the concept of the API. The word API is basically, in simple terms, rules for two computers to talk to each other. For example, if you look at this diagram over here, let me bring my pointer. In this diagram that you see, these two boxes represent two computers. One is called the host, one is called the client. For example, the host computer can be the YouTube server, right? And the client will be the people who visit the YouTube server. So if I browse YouTube right now, and you browse YouTube right now, and your friend browses YouTube right now, all three of us are referred to as clients. If you're browsing it from your laptop or your mobile phone, that mobile phone, that laptop, that iPad, they're all clients. And the YouTube servers that are sending you these videos, that are allowing you to stream these videos, we call that the host. The API, or an API, is simply a description of how these two entities should talk to each other. That's all that it is to it. It's not about a certain application, a certain programming language, or let's say a certain technology like machine learning or anything like that. It's simply a set of rules how two computers should talk to each other. Now, how you write those rules or what those rules look like is something we'll get into very shortly. Okay, but no matter what the host is sending you, whether it is a video, an image like on Instagram or Facebook, or emails like Gmail, no matter what kind of service they are providing you based on this set of rules we call API, you will be making requests through the internet. And if you want to make requests through the internet, you have to choose a certain protocol, a certain internet-based protocol. So for example, we have HTTP, if it's a web service, SMTP if it's an email service, FTP if it's a file service. So for example, if you've ever tried to host your website on GoDaddy, I don't know how many of you have actually tried deploying your website, but if you try to deploy your website on a hosting platform like GoDaddy or Bluehost, you've probably encountered this application where you can drag and drop your files. That uses FTP. Okay, my point is this though. The word API refers to a set of rules for how two computers should talk to each other in this client-host relationship. But even though the rules are, let's say, extensive, they are finite. You have to choose what kind of rules you want to follow. Okay, I know this is kind of abstract and perhaps even to some extent vague, but that will be clear in a second. The important thing for you to know is what the word API means, and more to the point, unlearn the meaning of an API. So it's not an application, it's not a certain code, it has nothing to do with payment gateways, not necessarily. Okay, it just means rules. How do I talk to your server? And how will your server respond to me? Okay? Now, let me take you to an example of an API-based application. So we start to get a better idea of what an API is and how you can start working with it. Okay, so what you see here on my screen now are some examples of applications that you can work with if you know how to work with APIs. If you understand the rules that I described in an API, then you'll be able to, for example, deploy your own web service. Or you can store your data on the cloud. You can do analytics. So for example, let's say you build your app and you want to employ machine learning services from AWS so you can run those algorithms against your analytics and see, for example, what your users are up to when they come onto your application. And of course, other applications within machine learning, like computer vision. For example, you upload a picture or a video and you want to, for example, use the power of AI to identify what's in that picture, what's inside that video. Now, the examples of what you can do with or let me rephrase that. The number of things you can do if you understand how to work with APIs is almost infinite. Like any problem that can be solved on a computer, well, you can employ those services. All you need to do is understand enough code and enough about something we call HTTP, so you can connect to those services. So you can connect to a machine learning service, to an analytics service, to a storage service, to a cybersecurity service. Okay. Now, this is not, of course, going to be a tutorial, like a full-blown tutorial on how to get coding and how to become a proficient developer with APIs. But if you have a high-level understanding, that can make it much easier for you to actually, for example, build your own application that had its own API and can connect to third-party applications. Okay. So even though we're not going to look at coding too much, and we won't get into technical details, the fact that we are going to define these important concepts, that alone will make it so much easier for you to get started with building your own API-based application. And in a moment, I'll tell you where Node.js comes into the picture. So I want you to navigate to this URL. So you have it on your browser history, so you can revisit this website after we're done with this session. And I'm going to also open this link in my browser to show you something very quickly. Okay. So we want to go to this URL. Let me copy the URL very quickly and open it over here. Now, how many of you know what Node.js is? If you know what Node.js is, type in yes. If you don't know what Node.js is, type in no. But I'll give you, I'll quickly explain what Node.js is. Basically, yeah, someone asked if I can share the URL in the chat. There it is. Now you know that there are many programming languages you can choose from. There's PHP, Python, Ruby, C++, you name it. Okay, there are many applications that you can choose from. And with all of these different languages, you can build an API-based application. But why Node.js? Now, Node.js is a program. I'm going to give you the simple definition of what this Node.js is. Node.js is an application that allows you to code in one program language and then in turn deploy that application in any platform. For example, if you want to build an iOS application, you need to know a program language called Objective-C. If you want to become an Android developer, you have to know Java. If you want to build desktop application, you have to know C++. If you want to learn if you want to build a website, a web server, you have to know something like PHP or Ruby and so on. So, for example, when I wanted to learn developing, when I was learning how to build web application, I had to learn multiple languages. But then this thing comes along called Node.js, and it made it possible for you to write a program or learn one programming language and then deploy an app on different platforms. In other words, with Node.js, you can build a web server, which is the topic of today. You can build mobile applications. You can build desktop applications. You can even program robots with Node.js. Now, you can do a little research on your own, but you will find that it is now the most popular platform for building applications. Now, Node.js is not a program language. It is an app that converts a certain programming language into binary, and that allows you to deploy on different platforms. The programming language that Node.js compiled is called JavaScript. So these two things are related to each other. The programming language JavaScript and Node.js are closely related to each other. JavaScript is a programming language. Node.js is an app that turns JavaScript into binary. Okay, now what does this have to do with this website that I brought you to, this NPM.js? NPM.js is a community, is a very big community for sharing your JavaScript code. So this website that I'm showing you right now, npmjs.com, is a website full of JavaScript projects. You have React, you have Vue, you have Angular, you have Express. So many applications that are written to JavaScript can be found on this platform. Any problem that you can think of, any coding problem that you can think of, you will be able to find on this platform. So there are programs written exclusively in JavaScript that are designed to work with Node.js. Now, the script that I'm going to show you here is this one over here. How many lines of code? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines of code. If you have Node.js, take this JavaScript code that I'm showing you on your screen. You'll be able to run a simple server. Now, the script that I'm showing you here is not it's a very simple server. It's not doing anything fancy. But technically speaking, with these 6 lines of code, what you're looking at right now is a web server. Now, some of you won't appreciate the simplicity and what it means for you to have 6 lines of code and call it a server. Because if you had tried your hand at developing web applications on your own before, you would know that you would need a lot more lines of code to have something called a web server. My point is this. The reason we want to go with Node.js is because, number one, it allows you to build applications on different platforms. One of them is a web-based API, and you can do this easily. So once you've done this workshop and you kind of have an idea what an API is, you might think to yourself, okay, great, I know what an API is and I know what I can do with it. How do I get started? The answer is you want to begin with Node.js because it's easy to use, you can do so many things with it, and you have a big community of people who are every day adding new projects, new libraries to this platform. So that's the answer why we want to talk about Node.js. It's easy for you to get started, and there are so many things you can do with it. So if you're thinking, okay, Node.js is easy for beginners, but what if I want to become professional? What if I want to, like build enterprise level applications? Can I do it? And the answer is yes. So whether you're down, if you're a beginner to programming, or you're in advanced programming and you want to get involved with APIs, Node.js is the right application or the right ecosystem to go with. Node.js and JavaScript. Okay. Now, I want to tell you about tools that you need to become familiar, that you need to know about to actually build and deploy an API-based application. Okay. But before I do that, let me quickly show you an example of an API-based application. I will bring you back to the other slide. So this is where we stopped. We looked at, I give you a list of API-based applications. Let me now show you an actual API-based application, and I will bring you back to this slide over here. Okay. So I want to take you to the Google Image API. So Google Image API. This service from Google Cloud, it is an example of an API-based application. Now let me show you what it does. I'm pretty sure you have an idea because the Google search engine uses this. I'm going to click here to upload a photo that I have saved on my computer. Okay. And it's this picture. Once this photo is uploaded to the Google Vision API application, in a couple of seconds, it will start to analyze this file and the contents of this file. And then once it's done, it's going to tell me exactly what's in this image with incredible accuracy. So let's let this run for a few more seconds. I need to tell them that I'm not a robot. And here's the link. I'm going to put this in the chat so you can also experiment yourself. Okay. Now you can see once it's done, this application, this API-based application from Google, has now determined what's inside this picture. So you can see it's drawn a square, a green square, identifying the face of the person in this picture and the boundaries of the human being. Like this is their face and this is their whole head. In addition to that, it will also analyze the emotions this person is experiencing. Now, if you had to upload a different picture, let's say a picture of an iPhone, it would actually tell you that this is an iPhone. It will tell you that it's a smartphone. It's the iPhone brand. This is the kind of application you have on the screen, and it would even tell you the text that is being displayed on the phone. Now, the reason I've went with this picture is because it's simple enough to get the idea across. It's telling you that this person is not experiencing joy, not sorrow, not anger, and it's not surprising because she doesn't have much emotion on her face. Let me actually upload another picture where the person is actually showing some emotion on their face. Okay, but you can see that it's telling you with 94% confidence, this person is practically emotionless. And we can see this for ourselves. Let's try another one. Now this person is smiling. Let's see how the API application performs. Here, we can see that it's indicating that this person is experiencing a lot of joy. Not much sorrow, not much anger, not surprise. Nothing is blurred. They were wearing no headgear. Okay, and it's 73% confident about this analysis. The things you can do with just this one particular application is, I mean, imagine it. Imagine the number of things you can do with this. For your e-commerce, for, let's say, your internal business. Now, we don't have much time for me to take you through the different things you can do with the Vision API or the different applications that you can integrate into your own application. But I hope you get the idea with this small example. So what I want to talk, what the focus of today's workshop is, let's say you've seen an API app like this, and you think to yourself, my goodness, this is great. I want this. How do I, for example, build an application where I can upload photos to the Google API endpoint and have Google, for example, analyze the contents of this image and tell me, this is the face, this is the phone, this is the shoe, this is the bag. Or for example, how can I integrate with the Google Map API? I want to, for example, build something, an app, where people can, for example, pick their location, their destination, and I can use the power of Google Maps to, for example, create a route for them. Kind of like what you see on the different applications, like food delivery and like taxi services, that kind of thing. Okay, so how do you integrate with an application like this? So coming back to the slide, that script I showed you earlier from the npmjs.com website, that is a very simple example of what goes into your application. Okay, in order for you to deploy an API-based application, in order for you to integrate a third-party API application, you need some kind of program. You need a script with which other computers can communicate, and a script that you can use to communicate with other servers. Okay, in this slide, I'll show you how to deploy one, and then I will revisit this idea very quickly. That script I showed you before from Express.js, you would put it inside a file, you would save that file, and then what you need to do is get this file. Now, it doesn't have to be Node.js, by the way. The idea applies whether you use Node.js, PHP, Ruby, you name it. The idea is, like, this diagram captures the idea irrespective of what programming language you choose to work with. But this particular example is about Node.js. What you would do is you would take that script along with other related files and folders, and you would take this folder and you have to upload it to some kind of server. Okay, now that server can be AWS, it can be Azure, it can be a Heroku. Okay, somehow you need to be able to get this application project onto server.js, into your destination server. To do that, you need something called Git. Okay, I hope you're making a note of this. If you're not making note of this, just make sure to revisit this video after we're done. In order to get your application to be deployed on that server, you need something called Git. Okay, now Git, very quickly, is a version control system, and no matter what service, no matter what cloud platform you choose to go with, AWS, Azure, IBM, you name it, the only way you can deploy your application to their server is using this technology called Git. Okay, more on this later. Now, once you have bookmarked that website from Express that I showed you earlier, and you've done your research on Git, you may have to spend some time to kind of understand what this Git technology is, and learn to program with it. But at the minimum, this is everything you would need to code your API-based application, test your API-based application, and deploy your API-based applications to the client. So the items that I've put on the screen right now, these are everything you need. So let's begin with the first one. VS Code is a code editor that allows you to write programs. Now, you don't have to go use this particular IDE, but this one is especially popular because it's lightweight, and you can add so many plugins to this code editor. It's excellent. So I highly recommend you use this code editor, but if you have your own, that works just as well. Then we have Node.js. I told you what Node.js is. It's a program that allows you to do what? Write JavaScript code, and then deploy your application on the platform of your choosing. If you want to be a web developer, great. You can use JavaScript to write your web server, run it on Node.js, and you have a web server. You want to build a mobile application? Great. You can take your JavaScript code, you can learn some JavaScript code, run it in Node.js, and you can deploy your application on mobile platform. So these two go together. Okay. So you install VS Code, you install Node.js, and you can begin learning JavaScript code to, to get started with your journey. Now, once you have Node.js, you'll automatically also have something called NPM. And NPM is that community I told you about. It's this online platform where people share the Node.js application. But it's also an application itself. So VS Code is an app, Node.js is an app, NPM is an app, and so is Git. But NPM is an app that you install on your computer that allows you to work or download files from this website, this Express website. Okay. If you've browsed this platform and you found a couple of nice packages that you want that can help make your application better, then there's a tool that you install on your computer that allows you to download and upload, JavaScript files to the platform. Git, Git again is not for this JavaScript language. It's all programmers use it, no matter what platform they're developing for, no matter what program language they're working on. All of them will use Git. Git has two important purposes. The first one, the primary reason for using Git, is version control. It allows you to, for example, take snapshots of your work every time you write code. And I mean, that's a big topic on its own. We won't get into that today. But the second reason you need Git is, like I said, it's the only way you can get your application to go to your server. So once you've installed VS Code, once you've installed Node.js, once you've installed NPM, and now you're learning to code in JavaScript, and you've written your program, and you say, okay, great, I have this application, now I want to put it online so people can use it. Well, the only way you can do that is if you have Git. Okay, so you need this. Without Git, you will not be able to deploy your app to a server. Now, what's a server? Like I said, a server is a computer on which your application will run. Now, you cannot build an application on your computer and host on your physical laptop. So you have to upload your app on a specialized computer, the ones that are provided by AWS, Azure, Heroku. I don't recommend GoDaddy because GoDaddy is not flexible enough for building your API-based applications. So you want to go with something like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, and so on. For beginners, I highly recommend Heroku. So make a note of that. Okay, you want to use VS Code as a code editor. And once you have Node.js installed and you have NPM installed and Git installed, begin your API app journey with Heroku. It's much easier than the other vendors, and it's free. Okay, so now you've deployed your application. Okay, you've looked at some examples on GitHub, on NPM for how to build a simple script. Now you also, at some point, you may want to also store your information on a database, right? So if people are uploading stuff to your application, or employees in your company are storing data on your application. Where do you store data? Another particular vendor we recommend is MongoDB. Why MongoDB? Because MongoDB stores data in a format called JSON, which happens to be the format in which all Node.js-based applications store the data, communicate, and interact with. Okay, so it's Node.js applications, of which there are many. You do a quick Google search of what companies use Node.js on their platform, you'll be surprised. But all of these Node.js applications work with a single data format, and it's called JSON. You can use JSON to interact between two applications. You can use JSON to save a large database of all of your products and your customers. And MongoDB is an excellent vendor for this particular data format. It's easy to connect to the database, and they of course support JSON fully. Okay, so once you have your app on the cloud, you've learned some JavaScript, and you have an idea about the meaning of an API. The next step for you is to test your API-based application, and this is now going to take us to I'll show you an example of an API. I showed you an example of an API-based application, but now I want to show you an actual API. Like, I want to show you the rules. What does it mean for you to write rules, write an API for yourself in a second. But this tool called Postman allows you to test your application so that you're sure that your application is in fact complying with those rules. Are you following those rules? Because if you don't follow those rules, then you won't be able to use a service like Google Vision API or Google Maps. And other developers, other applications won't be able to talk to your application. Okay, so it's not enough for you to know JavaScript or any program language and purchase your account on AWS Azure. You actually have to know, okay, I'm building this application, but is my application compatible with other applications? Can other applications talk to my application? I'll show you that in a second. But Postman is for that purpose. Okay. Now, I want to show you how you can integrate another API application into your own application. So I showed you an example of an API application, this Google Vision API. This is an example of it. And I told you how you can deploy your own. I showed you the script. I told you about Node.js. I told you that the best way for you to get started is to learn JavaScript. I took you through the ecosystem, like the tools you need to know about, like from start to finish. But now let me show you how to integrate a third-party API application. And I want you to go to this URL. Let me copy this URL and put it in the chat. Okay, you also want to bookmark this. Okay, and I'll open it here. By taking you to this URL, you will understand two things. Number one, you will understand like what the rules of the API look like in actually, and how knowing that will allow you to like work with something like Google Vision API or MongoDB or Google Images or Google Maps, or in this case, the documentation that I'm showing you here is from Cloudinary. Cloudinary is another cloud vendor like Google Cloud for storing images. So MongoDB, which I told you about, is for storing textual data, like text-based data. Cloudinary, however, is a service for storing images specifically. They also support videos, but it's primarily about photos, because for storing images and working with images, you need a specialized service. But this is what I'm showing you right now as an API. Here, for example, they're saying, hey, if you want to upload a picture to our cloud service, okay, you need to send you need to send an HTTP request to this URL, and it has to be this method. Look at this for a second, and I'll take you back to the slides from earlier. Okay? You have the word post, and then you have this URL. So this would actually translate into something like api.cloudinary.com/resource/upload. If I bring you back to the slide from earlier, I told you that if you want to talk to a server, you need to follow a certain protocol. If it's, for example, web service, use HTTP. If it's an email server, use SMTP. If it's a file server, FTP, and so on. Now, for Cloudinary, because they are a web server, you need to use HTTP. And within the umbrella of HTTP, you have different ways you can talk in HTTP. For example, if you and I are talking through email, there are different methods we can talk in email. For example, I can send you an email directly. I can send you an email directly and CC someone else. I can send you an email and BCC someone else. You, in turn, can reply to me. You, in turn, can reply to me and the people I CC'd, and so on. So email is one way for us to talk, but within the umbrella of email, there are different ways for communication. Same thing here. So Cloudinary uses HTTP. They don't use the other one. They don't use FTP or SMTP. They use HTTP exclusively. But within HTTP, they're saying, hey, if you want to upload a picture, you have to use post, and you must send in this URL. And by the way, if you want the code, you can copy the code from here. So they've been nice enough to not only tell you where and how to upload a picture to the server, they even give you snippets. They're giving you code. If you're a PHP developer, you would do it this way. Okay, this is the code. If you're a Java developer, you do it this way. Now, the platform that we will go with is, or the language that we will use is JavaScript. And JavaScript, as you know, is written. Well, it's if you want to use JavaScript for the purpose of talking to the server, you need Node.js, and this is the code for it. So really, there is one line of code and a few changes, of course. I mean, that's not all there is to it, but this is primarily the line of code that makes it possible for you to take a photo, send it to their service, and save it there. Now, I didn't show you the documentation for Google Vision API, but it's similar to this. Same idea. They will tell you, hey, if you want to upload, then you must make a post request, or you need to make a put request, or a get request, or a delete request. So, by the way, if all of this is new to you, make another note. Make a note of something called HTTP methods. HTTP methods. Have a look at that. You'll have more clarity about this. But this is the meaning of an API. What I'm trying to emphasize is that an API is not an application. It's documentation. It's rules. How do I talk to you? Okay. Now the rules for Cloudinary is different from the rules from Google Cloud. It's different from the rules on Facebook. It's different from the rules on Twitter. But even though they have different rules, they still they will have to use one of the given protocols. You'll either use HTTP or SMTP or FTP. Okay. Now, for the most part, you'll be using HTTP exclusively, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, AWS, all of them, because they're web-based services. You'll be using HTTP. And when you go to their documentation, it will look something like this. It will look just like this. This is the API you're looking at right now. This is an API you're looking at. Okay. Now, once you've looked at some of these examples, you will then learn to document an API yourself. So once you've learned how to code, once you've learned about the tools I told you about, so once you know what these tools are over here, once you've had these tools, the next thing you want to do is look up at the examples of documentation. Learn how to document an API so that once you deploy your application to the cloud and you have a nice domain name to which applications can communicate, the next thing you want to do is learn how to document, how to write your own rules. Hey, if you want to, for example, I have a great application for, let's say, I don't know. Let's think of an example. Finding the best rates for air tickets. Let's say you have a great idea for helping people find the best, ticket. Let's say they're looking for different ways to travel back home to their city, and they don't know if I should go with this airline, I go with that airline. Now you happen to have an application that makes it easy for people to do that. okay? And now other companies want to integrate your API into their application. You need to then document. So you would have to look at examples to see what that means. You need to tell people, hey, if you want to talk to our application, you need to make an HTTP request, and then you need to you need to detail that. For example, for this, if you want to, for example, get the best pricing, you need to make a post request. If you want to get a list of all of the destinations that we have available, you need to make a GET request, and so on. Okay, now this is, of course, a lot to cover, and we're not able to do this in an hour, but I'm trying to give you all of the important, let's say, pillars of web programming. Okay, so by the way, if you want to develop an API, that's within the domain of web programming. Okay, but hopefully you'll be able to revisit this video, take notes, and then explore these concepts in greater detail in your own time. And before we wrap up, this link that I have here, okay, this will help you learn what it means to write good APIs, write good documentation. I'll also put this in the chat, but I'll give you some ideas. Where is the chat? Here we go. Someone asked if they can get a recording of the session. Yes, this recording is being live streamed, but it will be recorded, so you can come back and watch this later. Now, you need to, of course, put aside time to learn API best practices, but I'll give you the first three important ones. The first one is that you need to use the appropriate HTTP method. Whether you want to talk to a third-party API application, or a third-party API application wants to talk to you, you need to have the correct HTTP method. For example, in HTTP, if all you want to do is receive something from the host, the correct HTTP method is GET. The word GET. Okay? If, for example, you are using your browser to watch a video on YouTube, if you were to inspect what your browser is doing, like there's a tool that allows you to inspect what's happening behind the scenes, you will find that your browser on your behalf is making a GET request to retrieve that video. If, however, you want to upload a photo, for example, when I bring it to the Google Vision API here and I click on new file and I attach a new file, we are making a post HTTP method. Okay? And there are many. There is GET, there is POST, PUT, patch, delete. There's a long list of them. So, but no matter what, you need to make sure that you're using the appropriate HTTP method. So, for example, if you want to upload a video, or if someone wants to upload an Excel document to your application, they can't use GET. They must use the correct HTTP method, which is POST, and so on. Okay, that's number one. The number two is you need to use queries and parameters. So, for example, let's say you have an e-commerce application, or let's say you want to connect to Amazon e-commerce, not AWS, Amazon e-commerce, and you want to get the list of products. How many products are there? Millions. You cannot download millions of data. You cannot stream millions of products through an API. You have to do it in batches, in 10s and 20s and 50s. Okay, and the way you can do that is using queries and parameters, a combination of queries and parameters. Queries allow you to filter information. So, for example, you don't want all of the products on Amazon. You want a specific type of products. For example, give me all the smartphones. Give me all the smartphones that are priced between 500 to 2000 AED. Give me all of the phones that are, for example, only Android, and so on. Okay, so queries and parameters allow you to be more specific with your API-based request. And the third, this is important, you need to have versioning. This is important if you're someone who's considering working with API applications like Facebook or Instagram, they regularly update their APIs. In other words, they regularly update the rules. So for example, if you follow the documentation on their website and they say, hey, if you want to, for example, do this with our application, and this is how you code it, 2 months later, they will change the rules. And what will happen is, potentially, your code can stop working. So one day you'll wake up and you'll find out people are complaining, hey, why is your application not working? Oh, it's because our API is out of date. To alleviate that problem, companies like Facebook, Instagram, they have versions. So let's say they want to add a new feature to their application and they have new rules. Rather than changing the existing rules, they will add a new set of rules. Version 1, version 2, version 3. And you want to do the same thing for your own application. And of course, to learn more about API best practices, you can visit this link that I shared on in the chat. And if you don't have this link, if you're not watching this on Zoom, you can either take a screenshot or, after this workshop is over, you can rewatch this video and, visit all of these links. Before we wrap up, let me quickly talk about the Coding Bootcamp, because like I said, we have a lot of people who always ask about, the bootcamp, is it right for me? Is it easy? Is it hard? What is going to be covered? The Coding Bootcamp that we have here at AstroLabs is a 2-month, it's about 2 months long. And in this 2-month period, we start from scratch. Like this is especially ideal for you if you've never written a line of code in your whole life. We begin by teaching you the very basics of coding. Okay, and we begin by teaching you the basics of HTML and CSS. HTML and CSS is of course for the UI of the application. So we'll begin with that. So we have like so you will be able to see results of your work immediately. Like on the first day of the bootcamp, you will actually see what a programming language does. Like you will have a visual, tangible experience. So we'll begin with the basics, and then we will go over all of the things I talked about today and more. So when I bring it back to this table here, when I talked about Node.js and JavaScript and NPM and how they're all related to each other, and I told you about the importance of Git, and I told you about different servers that exist out there, and the different types of ways you can store data on the cloud, MongoDB, Cloudera, etc., and testing your application Postman. All of these are covered in the bootcamp. Okay, so we will the ultimate goal of the bootcamp is for you to finish a full stack application. Full stack means you have a front end, like you have a nice user interface, and you have a backend. Backend means you have an API-based application. That means your application can store data to the database, you can store images on the cloud, and these two applications, like you will, by the way, your full stack application is made of 2 applications, front and the backend, and these two will be talking through HTTP. And that means you will learn how to document an API. You will learn how to build a UI for your application, build a backend for your application, and then learn how to get these two to talk to each other. And everything that goes in that full stack application, in order for you to graduate from this program, you must complete all of the important components that go into any application. Login, registration, you have to deploy the application to the cloud, you need to test it, you need to have a nice UI, and you need to have that. So all of the important elements that go inside a modern day full stack application, you will learn how to do them, and you will be required to complete them in order for you to graduate this program. And to learn more about this is the link. Of course, if you have any questions about any of the details that go into this program, we are here to answer those questions. And with that, I'm going to allow Majid to jump in.
Thank you, Danny. Hi, everyone. Just before we end the session today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the journey that you can take with us. So there's a few things that we offer at AstroLabs that would be relevant to you. Like Danny said, we offer a coding bootcamp. It's one of the many courses that we have. You can see them at the bottom here. The coding bootcamp covers material similar to what we covered in this webinar, but builds on it. Just like Danny said, it's all very practical. You work during the classes, you build your website. I'm going to be sending a form very shortly. If you're interested, do fill out the form and let me know if I can reach out to you about it. Besides the courses, there's also two other things that you can do with us. We have a lot of webinars similar to this, except this is an open webinar. As an alumni, we'll offer you alumni exclusive events. There's a lot of push from our end on these events. You'll see a lot of them coming up. And in these events, we build on material we already covered in the bootcamp. And we also offer webinars that are related to personal growth. So how to write a killer CV, how to build your virtual persona. So if you're someone who's interested in continuously learning, the best thing you can do for yourself is be an active part of our community. And that also starts with filling out the form that I'm going to send here. As an alumni, you'll have access to our network. As you can see here, leverage our network. Through our network, you can connect with people, find employment opportunities, employ someone if you're an employer. Our network is really large. It has more than 1,000 people from a lot of different backgrounds in coding, in digital marketing, and social media. And it's a resource that's very rare to find in this region, but you've already found it if you're in this meetup right now. So do fill out the form that I sent in the chat just now. You can choose to also sign up for our newsletter in the form where you'll be updated with our new events that are happening and our new courses. If you're also interested in getting a recording of this webinar, then I'll send it by email to everyone who fills out the form for you to look back at it later. And that's about it. So if you'd like to be someone who continuously learns, continuously builds on what they already know and stand out from other people in the field, do fill out the form. That's the best thing you can do for yourself. Join our community.
Yeah, with that, I also want to add, because we covered a lot of, we touched on many different terms, Node.js, NPM, this and that. I would highly recommend you fill out the form so you can watch this video and then, like I said, in your own time, visit those topics one by one and share your questions to us. If you want to learn about these in more detail, I encourage you that you take some notes, like what is this, what is this, what is this, put it to us, we'll clarify it for you, okay? But of course, if you want access to this video, it's we will share it with you once you fill out that form. Okay, everybody? And with that, I want to thank you all for attending this session. Make sure you fill out that form. And I hope to see you all in the next workshop. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And for now, take care and bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.